Welcome to Dead Genre Chronicles, a critical podcast on the diversity of JRPGs. Drawing from the origin of this genre to the present day, every month we play through a JRPG and we invite you to play along and send us your questions and thoughts on it. I'm Devin, and I'm largely to blame and or thank for this mess.
I'm Becky. I'm still mad about how they spelled Blue Sphere.
I'm Leroy, and I didn't come up with one. I didn't know we're doing this.
I mean, that's
Nah,
fine.
it's fair enough.
So, at the end of the Nocturne episode, we reveal the podcast is coming to an end. We're going to get to, why that's probably for the best even without other life interferences later on, but we're going to do our usual kind of wrap-up.
Well, let's just quickly clarify. We kind of did at the end of the Nocturne episode, but let's clarify exactly what's changing, which is we're not going to do the thing where the three of us play the same game in the space of a month and then do 2 hours of talking about it at the end.
Yeah.
That's going away. The Discord is staying. Myth and Kin is staying. World Revolution is staying. Dead Genre Live is staying.
Yeah, basically, Becky's still going to be streaming stuff. It's just not going to be, relevant to a monthly schedule like it has been usually.
And we might still do the odd audio bit as well, here and there.
Yeah, but it's just not going to be a strict monthly thing like we've been doing for the last 3 years.
Yeah. The other thing that's important to note is that the Patreon will be being wrapped up sometime in the next couple of months. We might put together a list of our friends that you can transfer your pledges to so that you can support us by supporting people who we like and who like us.
Yeah. Leroy has, I believe Extra has a Patreon page that we're going to kind of...
Which I should have closed, but I never did.
Yeah.
I even changed the description of the Vectra Patreon, just basically saying don't support this, but then I left it up.
Yeah. The thing about Patreon is that I had to do this once already when I was thinking I was going to get really into games crit writing. I had my Patreon open for that, and there were some nice people who were donating, a few of whom are still just kind of tacked onto the JRPGs are dead stuff. But basically, Patreon doesn't really have a way to, change what your creator thing is for and, go, okay, we kind of want to clean the slate. And because I have, already submitted tax information once, I don't want to have to make a new account and go, hey, I wanted to clean the slate because I'm doing a different thing now. But yeah, I'm basically going to be reverting the JRPGs are Dead Patreon into a patron-only account, and that'll be how I support folks on Patreon when I have more money to do so. I basically am going to do that after the end of August, after the Patreon money comes in for the Final Fantasy XIII episode. Basically, for a long while, we've basically only been getting enough Patreon money to cover the occasional expense and pay me for my editing work, which has been nice, but not terribly sustainable. So that's where that's going. So don't worry, we're not going to keep... You don't need to take any action if you're a patron of the show. That'll be handled by mid-September, I would say. But yeah, we're going to be carrying on as a group of friends instead of a group of organizers for a podcast and associated schedule, because life kicked up real hard this year.
Yeah, Devin and I are definitely just going to be too busy over the coming year, and I think Leroy too has various things on the horizon.
I felt like I was always too... There's the one time during the Chrono Cross episode, I played Chrono Cross over 3 days,
Yeah.
It's a lie if I ever said this podcast fit neatly into my life.
Yeah. I guess we're just getting into it now. The reason it's been such a hard thing to do is because we all do have lives, even if I've been unemployed for most of it for the last 3 years, and fitting a 30 to 60 to sometimes more hour game into a month alongside everything else on a schedule is rough.
Yeah.
And that is the fastest we could do it. We've said if we could bend time and actually make weekly episodes, that would be cool, but that's physically not possible, especially with Becky, who's got, like, courses to plan and papers to grade and shit.
I'm a junior academic. I have, like, workload hell.
Yeah.
10 months of the year. But, so that's the practical side of why we're kind of wrapping things up. And there's a theoretical side that I think we'll come to after we've reviewed our year.
Yeah.
But, what did we play first this year?
Legend of Dragoon.
That's right.
Oh, wait. Oh, I guess that was the anniversary up, so that counts.
Yeah.
I've got a list of the games we played this year next to me. Out of order, actually, because I'm an idiot. But, oh no, that list is in order, my bad. But I've put a U in brackets next to the ones I didn't finish. And we started this cycle with 3 games that I failed to finish. And we ended with one I failed to finish as well.
Yeah. This year has just been rough in a lot of ways, both like outside and inside of the schedule. We basically started the year with 3 games, Legend of Dragoon and then the 2 Golden Suns, that were things I had played and, in the case of Golden Sun, finished, but wanted an excuse to go back to and see if they held up. And they basically did for me, but they weren't as interesting for Becky, and I don't think for Leroy either.
Well, I really struggled with them. Legend of Dragoon particularly, I couldn't play. And, like, Golden Sun I got on with well enough, but the Lost Age just took forever and was a lot to fit in. So, yeah, I didn't have a good time with them.
Legend of Dragoon is one of my favorite games we've done, actually.
The thing was, I had actual personal history for once, and it wasn't just like a thing I picked up like, I'm 22, what's this video game? It was like a thing I had seen around when I was like 11 and 12 and played a bit of, but just never finished. And actually getting around to beating it was cathartic, but also I can totally see where the systems just fucking fall apart if you can't do the action commands, which is not great for accessibility.
Well, the battle system is also, it's not a very elegantly constructed game either. It's just kind of arbitrary. Like, when the difficulty spikes up, it doesn't correlate to necessarily anything in the story. It just happens. You're gonna get fucked on this boss because we felt like it.
Yeah, like fucking the beast that they're just like, if you use this super rare item that is better used on, like, experience birds, you can put him to sleep for 1 turn. Okay? That was stupid. That's always been stupid.
And like, Legend of Dragoon starts out like really boring too, and it's boring for like 2 discs. But then, like, as it stops making sense, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it drops a lore bomb or like 4 on you, and then at the end of disc 3, it's just like, also, the bad guy is your father, it's Star Wars, and I'm your dad's fucking lover? No, I'm not your mom, though. Also, I'm weirdly
300 years old.
3,000.
Oh yeah, 3,000 years old.
It's just like, what? Everything. Why?
It's pretty maximal.
All tied up in like this weird, like not quite like fucking Shadow Heartsy horror aesthetic, but like uncomfortable, fantastic creations. Because all the enemy designs are real weird looking for the important enemies.
And Golden Sun is like solid enough. The Golden Sun games are good introductions to like JRPGs probably. I like, if you sit and like think about the story, it's not like the best story, but I guess it's not really the point either.
Yeah, it's kind of a children accessible game, and it doesn't really like go hard into like adult anything, like topics or like complexities. It's just like, we're saving the world. The biggest twist is that you were doing the bad thing in the first game because you need to save the world.
And it starts strong. Like I felt the opening sequence had quite a lot of impact.
Well, I actually think Golden Sun's brilliant. It's just the last stage, just like, I don't know what happened really.
I mean, they were supposed to be one game, so
I guess, it's sometimes a thing that happens where, like, it's a known thing in the industry that the opening parts of the game are the bits that get the most attention in development, right?
Because you can guarantee that people are going to see them.
Yeah, if you have extra resources to spend, that's where they go. So it might partly be a manifestation of that principle. But also, like, Lost Age is just longer than Golden Sun.
Well, the fact that they were, separated by dev periods means that I think they were approached as two different games, even though it's like they were the decision to split them happened early on, so they were developed as different games rather than this is just 3 and 4.
Yeah, but I think like originally the entire plot probably would have been, because there's also the thing where like Lost Age has to have you rise in power to meet where you were at in Golden Sun, and that's a lot of the game's like difficulty and like gameplay curve. So I don't know, like if it was a single experience and not split like that, it might have been more coherent as like an arc. I don't know, but that's conjecture. I have no way to say that was gonna happen. And then we played Saga,
which I also didn't finish, but I did like. That's a weird agglomeration of bits, and it's really interesting to see that many pieces just lying around that far back in the history of the genre. And like, it was interesting to play, but it was frustrating and very, very disjointed in a lot of ways.
I still think about the visual design in Saga 1 all the time.
Yeah.
And actually, the recently released, this is a plug for my friend's game, but John Thyard recently released Facets, and it does a visual callback to Saga 1 that's really, really good. The concept of aging or whatever is really dumb, but the stuff in Saga 1 is like very contemporary in the sense that it's similar to Yumi Nikki and etc.
I mean, like, on the point about the looks, I'm literally messing around in RPG Maker, making a tile set that looks like a Game Boy game because of Saga. Like, it's got a lot of visual impact to it that I appreciate. But I didn't finish it because I save stated carelessly in the middle of a really long level at a really bad point.
Yeah.
If only you had a chainsaw, you could have just chainsawed God.
I think I did that. It was really satisfying.
I didn't do that this time because I did it the first time we played, but yeah. I had a backup though in case. It's actually an annoying fight.
Yeah. And then Saga 2 was also, like at that point I was out of time and out of patience for dealing with the pitfalls of Saga games, so I played that with a lot of fast and loose cheat rules, but
Saga 2 is wild. I think I said it's better than a Super Nintendo Final Fantasy, and I'll probably stand by that. But it's like the same kind of game, basically.
Yeah. There is something really compelling about just like the toy box sense of it. It's like, I've got so many things in here, I'm just going to put them all in the game.
Well, it's almost like Dream Logic more than Toy Box, because it's they're not innately appealing. They're actually kind of arbitrary and random. But yeah, either way, yeah, it's interesting.
And then we played some Lunar. Fuck.
Yeah, that wasn't good. I kind of can't remember much about why I disliked it so strongly now.
Do you remember
maybe because it's just like misogynistic.
I remember it being very misogynistic.
Yeah.
Lunar is like, even when Lunar came out, even the old Lunar was like a super nostalgic game in the sense that it's embodying a period of anime that already passed when it came out, and then they remastered it on Saturn or PlayStation anyways. I guess, like, essentially assuming the game didn't reach. No, that's not true. It's actually, the original Lunar was a bestseller in Japan, so Game Arts was just like, we need to make some money.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't even know how to wrap that thought up. Basically, the fact that it's a nostalgic anime game, I don't know what that means, but that's what it is.
Then it got just like manhandled by Working Designs as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Yeah, that localization is odd.
Actually, I think I could just say Working Design stuff's awful. That was...
Yeah. God.
Then we played Luminous Arc, about which we don't have anything to say at all. Let's move on.
Luminous Arc's better than Lunar.
Yeah. I did a kind of trying to sort them out into which ones I preferred, and I can remember playing Luminous Arc, and I can remember what it looks like and stuff. But honestly, I am completely neutral on the thought of that game's existence.
Well, the game's very workmanlike.
Yeah.
I've played games like that. And the only person good at writing about a game like that would be a video game king.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would just like put my hands up and be like, well, it's like other games. It's not that interesting. I don't know what to say.
I appreciated it coming off the first 4 games of the year.
Yeah, the first
probably
6.
Well, we're only on game 5.
Yeah, I know, but we played 2 games twice.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Also, and I wanted to just play Saga 1, but Definitely was like, that's pretty short, let's do 2. And I was like, no, give me a break.
Yeah. We probably should have just done Saga 2, to be honest. But,
that would have worked too.
Also, like, Luminous Arc exists. That's all I can say about it. Like, it exists, and, like, the good priest girl turns out to be a witch with a horny outfit for some reason.
Because, of course.
Because JRPGs, and then you fight God.
Yep.
Then we played Treasure of the Rudras, and that was awful.
That was really bad.
Oh, God. It is good for one thing and one thing only. Putting weird bullshit into the spell generator and seeing what it gives you. like kink shaming being a holy.
I still got that Beffa Ygrex spell animation saved, where it just went across the screen in giant pink letters.
Oh,
Treasure of the Rudras is like Attack on Titan, where a lot of people, a lot of retrospectives don't even notice how, like, fucking dumb it is. They're like, oh, cool, the visuals are cool, this is Square at their peak, didn't come to America, that's a shame.
Oh, man. And we contrasted that with Live Alive, and at this point, I would kind of want to go back to Live Alive without the fucking time constraints and my fucking power going out.
Yeah. I also tried to do a listing of all the games we've ever covered, and Live Alive came in 4th out of 36 in terms of, like, preference. So, yeah, Live Alive was good. Treasure of the Rudras was not.
Yeah, oof. And then we did Shadow Hearts.
Which, I mean, this is possibly the one we're most split on. Like, I kind of really enjoyed Shadow Hearts, actually. And some of that is maybe just contrast to the dreck we'd been wading through.
Well, I think Shadow Hearts is the good version of Grandia 2.
Yeah. They're still both kind of, like, low tier, though. IMO.
I think Shadow Hearts has a lot of personality to it, which I'm not going to say that wasn't common in PS2 games, but, like, when I think about Rogue Galaxy in comparison to Shadow Hearts, like,
barf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shadow Hearts is really distinct, both in, like, the landscape of Japanese popular culture and games at the time. So,
and the weird singing in this background music. Fuck.
It's pretty intense.
I really wish the sequels weren't apparently, like, straight up awful, so I could maybe go to them and be like, hey, is this any better? Because the combat's silly but tolerable? Question mark.
I mean, it's an action commands game that I could handle, so it's...
You could handle making more difficult by making yourself blind the entire fucking game for double damage.
Yep. I didn't even do that till the end, because I didn't like it.
Yeah, it was pretty simple.
And then we played Exist Archive, and I blame Becky for this.
Sorry. No, I went back and re-listened to that episode yesterday, and actually, I'm just going to stand by the game. Like,
yeah,
it's got a lot of problems, but what I really want to stand by is the the one guy or the small team of writers on that game who put all the text in and, like, made the text work. And I'd love to see that group of writers write more games. Which, God knows if that's going to happen, because Exist Archive didn't do well and Tri-Ace aren't doing very well.
If Tri-Ace never makes another game again, I'd be fine with that. And if those people were disseminated to the entire industry and made better games than Tri-Ace as a whole, I would be fine with that.
They'll probably just be stuck making mobile games, because that's what happens.
I mean, they're Star Ocean and Nemesis and the fucking Valkyrie profile thing, and yeah, that's already happening. Good job, Square Enix. You're funding the thing that makes the big bucks. Mobile games for dead series.
And I feel like this just might be me too, but I feel like it's more often the later gens where you get video games where the story and writing are really good, but the actual, like, game the vehicle to deliver that is padded all to hell. It's really annoying to play. But that's like basically how Exist Archive felt to me.
Yeah, some of that is budgetary issues, right? Because like writing a game hasn't got that much more expensive, but like 3D modeling for a game and engine development for a game has.
And also just the market's unfriendly. Like the pressures to make that a 60-hour, 100-hour game that has to compete against Witcher 3 or whatever, or Final Fantasy 15, or even Kingdom Hearts 3 is reportedly has 80 hours of content, which actually kind of makes my heart sink. Like, I don't want to play Final Fantasy 15 version of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was a comparable point, you would only need to play it for 25 hours, because Final Fantasy 15 isn't actually that long. It's just loaded with garbage that you don't have to do.
Yeah. So that was Exist Archive.
Yeah. And then we played Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. It's a Mario & Luigi game. It was good.
Yeah, it was alright. Looks better on GBA, but is way easier on 3DS.
Aside from that one fucking Koopaling who will demolish your face.
Yeah, he was a bit much.
I love it, but it's a bitch.
It took me a few tries.
The one-shot attack.
Yeah, the sands. So after that, we played Radiant Historia. I'm still salty about that, even though I got paid to have it taken off my hands.
Ted was a very, very good guest in the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good to have Ted. And again, we talked over all our different impressions of that on a recent podcast episode, so it's not really worth rehashing, but like, I found it really appealing as a mood piece, even though its environments are bland, and it's the perfect ending is kind of terrible, really.
Yeah.
It's like a different example of what budget does to your game, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my opinion, but the writing's still good, but then, yeah, the vehicle to deliver the writing is like 5 levels over the course of 30 hours.
Yeah. I think we haven't... I don't think we've said this on a podcast, but we've definitely said them like the Discord. Like, Atlas apparently just fucking excels at putting their foot in their mouth when they get to remake or add content to fucking anything.
Yep, absolutely.
Like the most batshit things in Nocturne are the Maniacs editions, which only happen in like the version after the original, which was the one we got. And then there's fucking Deep Strange Journey, which has an entire plotline about some fucking extra waifu. And then there's fucking Radiant Historia, which has the perfect chronology shit. It's just like
Persona 4 Golden, P3 Portable.
Yeah,
can't wait for the Persona 5 extra where Akechi lives.
Well, I mean, the scuttlebutt has it that Akechi was originally planned to have his own palace, so there's going to be a remastered P5 with Akechi's palace in, where Akechi gets to live.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
The Atlas aesthetic is basically, we look smart until we keep talking because someone paid us to make a remake.
Wait. New Atlas 5 where the corrupt politician guy stops, like, he just redeems himself. And then he reenters society, and he becomes a good prime minister.
That Leroy, don't joke like that. You know they're gonna do that.
There is like an entire jungle's worth of monkey's paws curling right now, just completely clenched fists. The longer we talk about this, the worse P5 Ultimate is going to be.
God, and then we played Nocturne. Fuck, 2 Atlas games in a row.
Yeah,
that was a mistake, I think.
And like, say what you want about Radiant Historia, Nocturne is a worse written game with far worse mechanics.
Yeah,
well.
And like, apart from occasional moments of visual flair, it doesn't really have much more to say for it on the look side either. I fucking hate that game.
Yeah.
Just angry still.
I mean, we did only record the episode on it like 2 days ago. Yeah, we're recording this on the Sunday after the Friday that we recorded the Nocturne episode, and we're still kind of coming down off that, even though Becky's had like a week of playing Final Fantasy XIII to cheer up.
I'm a lot better for having like a quarter of Final Fantasy XIII under my belt.
Nocturne is just like a long line of how, like, JRPGs are a lot of these disparate parts, and then there will be times where people like really like one part of it, but while the rest of it's really annoying, and it's just like wild to me how often that happens on these games, I guess.
Yeah. I also said it on the episode, but it's also wild that, like, of all the games to point out as, like, an exception to all the annoying shit, it's fucking Nocturne, the worst of them all. It's befuddling. I'm so mad.
I think people really do like the illusion of you being evenly matched with your opponent, even though that's not how it really works in Nocturne, because your opponent's 10 levels above you. But it's also like the same fake rhetoric people say about Dark Souls, in that...
Yeah.
But it's not true, because there's all the times enemies that subvert that, like the bone wheel, so you can just instantly, drive across the map and kill you. Like, it's not a fair 1v1 against these bone wheels, but they will still say that because there is the one boss or the one enemy where it is an evenly matched fight, and that one becomes like a stand-in for everything else for some reason.
Yeah.
I kind of wrote about this in my piece for what was going to be the DGC zine, which was Why Do You Care If It's Realistic. I touched on the relationship between difficulty and realism, and I'm probably going to write something more in depth on this. And I didn't get to. I forgot to mention this in the Nocturne episode, but like, there's a real link between how video game experiences get capitalized in the sense of social capital vis-a-vis their reality, their realism, and their difficulty. And people place a lot of, like, capital G gamers place a premium on difficulty because it's a status building thing, right? So I think that's where some of the allegiance to Nocturne has to come from.
Yeah. Also saying, like, the equality thing, typically when you look at, like, action games that are classified as difficult, it's always, like, the particular enemies that are like, oh, I just like fighting an evenly matched fight, where the enemy is just as powerful as you are, like, when you have, like, DMC Devil May Cry and you're fighting Virgil as Dante, it's just like, oh, this is a big deal, because he can do what I can do, because he's another playable character, and, like, I don't know, people also like to make big deals out of, like, phantoms in Dark Souls sometimes. We're like, oh, it's cool because they're basically just other random people. But, yeah.
That equality is kind of meritocratic, right?
Yeah.
It repudiates any idea that some people have natural advantages.
Mm-hmm.
Or habituated advantages.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's been the last year of DGC.
It's been a chore, especially the first half.
I've been miserable the entire time. If it hasn't come across in the episodes, that's because I've been quiet. And that's how you can tell.
I haven't had a good year, but I enjoyed the DGC episodes at least.
But I mean, in some ways, like, games like Nocturne are more up your street than they are up mine and Evan's.
Well, even Legend of Dragoon was a high point, and I mean, I still liked getting mad at Treasure of Urdres, even if the game was just like the slow descent into madness.
Oh god, yeah, slow descent into madness is right.
Like, it was fun in a sense, a different kind of fun, but
yeah. We should probably also mention that we cut an episode for time, which was going to be Tactics Ogre.
Yep.
Which, like, we really did ourselves a favour cutting that one for time, because it would have killed us. And also, like, I mentioned this because I think it's relevant to the discussion we're going to have. Originally, in the episode where we did Exist Archive, we were going to do Thousand Arms, and we decided not to.
Yep. Hence the name that we went with.
Yes.
I forgot that, and now I remember.
Yeah. Because Thousand Arms is a steampunk game, and it's a fucking harem game.
Mm-hmm.
Along his journey, he meets a colorful cast of characters, including girls to date and allies to join his party. There's a dating minigame. It's the key feature in this game, which distinguishes it from most other RPGs, is its built-in mini dating simulation. Yeah, basically, it's Conception, but instead of raising the power of your Persona, but instead of raising the power of your, like, summons, you raise the power of your magic weapons that you make.
By dating them.
by dating random women who are like aligned with that shit, I guess. I don't know. I haven't played it. We didn't play it.
The thing is, like, I don't actually hate the idea of playing a dating sim, but it's like the premise of the game is the main character learned from his father how to be a womanizer.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's that kind of game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, the reason I bring that up is I think we all felt in one way or another that there was some barrel scraping going on this year.
Yeah.
Luminous Arc is the most obvious one to have made it through because, you know, it's an inoffensive game, but it's just like there's nothing to say about it, and the episode was really short.
Mm.
And Treasure of the Rudras, there was lots to say about, but it was all negative because the game is vile. And we've had this kind of mood that maybe we're running out of games to look at. There are some obvious franchises that we haven't done. The biggest one, and like you'll groan when I say it, but it's Fire Emblem. And there's Atelier and a few other things, but it's not clear what we'd gain by looking at them through this lens, I think.
And also, like, along with that, we, aside from Kingdom Hearts, which we only did 2 entries of because it was our first year, and I was just kind of excited to get to play Kingdom Hearts 2 again, and we were kind of short on ideas because we hadn't really gotten into the swing of things. We haven't done duplicates from any franchises.
We've done 3 Final Fantasy games.
Aside from Final Fantasy, which is an exception because it's so important to the Western narrative of JRPGs.
Yeah.
But, like, we've tried to keep things... When we've done duplicates, it's like Saga 1 and 2 or Golden Sun and the Lost Age because they're paired off. But there are fewer and fewer franchises that we could dip into for a single representative game that would be of any use to our, like, project.
I think also it's a matter of landmarking, right?
Mm-hmm.
You navigate a space by identifying its landmarks and how they stand in relationship to one another. And we've kind of got the landmarks now. And this was the rationale for covering things like Xenogears and Chrono Cross. You know, obviously there are landmarks we haven't gone to directly. We haven't done FF6, we haven't done Chrono Trigger, but we know where we stand on those games. Yeah. And in some ways, the last thing those games need is another 2 hours of nerds talking about them in depth, even if we might have something different to say than most people do.
Thinking also that, like, a lot of these games would be better suited to, like, more of a focus on what makes them good instead of the whole thing, because the whole, like for Exist Archive, for example, you got to spend a lot of time talking about how much it sucks before you can talk about what parts work. And it's like the kind of spontaneous, well, the game kind of back and forth about how awful the game was to play. Like, it's just like not the self-criticism I prefer to do with games that are more obscure, basically. Because I'd rather just like focus on the interesting part, basically. I'd rather have like a more focused thing, and that can't happen in a podcast structure like this.
Yeah, the thing that was really the strength of this was because we're discussing live, we could be a little bit kind of loose, and if somebody said something where they were just missing a detail that somebody else had access to, which happened a lot with me early on because I'm really ignorant, and you both know the history and the industrial context way better than I do. Like, I could just say something stupid and you go, no, wait, you need to know about the career of this guy who's responsible for that, and it's in these other games. And so it enabled us to develop a critical method, and I think we've got that now. Like, we can take what we learned doing this, and we can still like bounce ideas back and forth in our like mod channel and stuff, but we don't need to have hour-and-a-half long discussions about things where the first 45 minutes is me and or Devon yelling about how some mechanic or system in the game is incredibly obnoxious to deal with, and then the second half is Leroy just schooling us on like art theory. Like, we can
be freed from our format.
We can pick things apart better, and in other ways. Like, you know, obviously, one of the reasons that World Revolution is continuing, and I'm really keen for World Revolution to continue, is that I think that's a venue where a different group of games can be examined, and I think that's a really valuable thing for the eye of this project to turn towards, as it were. We don't need to talk about, I guess, a bit of a mea culpa. I feel like I'm increasingly talking about Japanese corporations as if they need defending, which they don't, because they're still corporations, even if they're Japanese.
That's actually kind of like always an intersection problem when doing culture work on this, because there's a lot of people who gravitate toward Japanese media because it's an oasis, because it has values different than and distant from values they probably feel are oppressive in where they live. They kind of like deify Japanese pop culture, but then they don't notice when, or they don't have the critical faculties to appreciate when Japanese pop culture is problematic or fascist or oppressive in its own home context. And
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't even know where I was going to go. I was just rambling.
Okay. The other thing is, like, we've come through and it's like a decade now of Japanese corporations, especially Square Enix. When people have a criticism of JRPGs, what they do is they say Square Enix suck now, or very occasionally a different developer, but it's usually Square Enix. And I don't want to care about Square Enix as a corporation, but I do want to care about the people who work at Square Enix.
A lot of them, like a lot of the people responsible for like loving Square Enix don't even work there anymore.
But that's the thing, like, there are still people at Square Enix doing good work, because, like, Square Enix made World of Final Fantasy a couple of years ago, and that's a really good game. And the criticism of Square Enix, like the criticism of any other studio, Hello Games or No Man's Sky, for example, it's worth pushing back on it, because it reflects a failure to understand how the industry operates on the part of NeoGAF posters and their ilk.
Well, okay, yeah, we're pro-labor, anti-shareholder.
Yeah, and to a certain extent anti-consumer, because if your attitude positions you as a consumer towards games, then you're not actually really getting anything out of them, and you're probably doing harmful things to the people who make them. But yeah, bring this back round to where I started from. What I'm finding myself doing, just psychologically, a lot is saying, you can't say that about Square Enix. Which, like, there might be good reasons for critiquing the complaint about Square Enix, but it's positioning me somewhere that I don't want to be as, like, the defender of JRPGs, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've made that case, and the issue goes back to the so-called death of the JRPG, right? JRPGs are dead, Dead Genre Chronicles. Those are jokes that came from a thing that was happening from 2009 through to probably about 2015, 16 even. And I'm still interested in the history that produces that. And I think over the 3 years, we've discovered some really important stuff, like the fact that Microsoft, when it was launching the Xbox, was specifically targeting Japanese dominance and trying to overturn it. The Manhattan Project, as Alex St. John called it. And it's important to remember that. And it's also important to reflect on Yahtzee and the development of zero punctuation in 2007-8. And, it's not just Yahtzee, that was also happening with Total Biscuit and Markiplier and people like that. But, it's Yahtzee in my head because that was the one I was most aware of. The way that changed and helped already harmful elements in gamer culture or game fan culture coalesce into something dangerous, which obviously kind of came to fruition in Gamergate or reached its peak in Gamergate. So there's a whole lot of other contextual stuff about the state of the Western industry that is caught up in the so-called death of the JRPG. But equally, and this, at the end of the Exist Archive episode, Leroy put the question of, well, one, why didn't Exist Archive do well? Which is half, it's kind of an obscure niche game, and half it was badly timed. And you went on to ask, can new IPs get a fan base anymore? Is the JRPG audience too invested in like a brand structure? And with the resurgence of JRPGs that we've seen in pure sales terms over the last 2 years, most obviously Nier Automata, Persona 5, Final Fantasy XV.
I think it could also be emphasized that both Persona 5 and Nier Automata were like critical bastions. A lot of people gathered around them to hash out complex and difficult things. Like these games were treated very seriously. Whether or not Persona 5 went over well with every single person, they were still treated like very serious, accomplished games.
Well, I think also certainly Persona 5 and FF15, and eventually also Nier Automata, though not at first, got the blockbuster treatment.
Yeah.
As defined by VGK in his brilliant recent essay that you should all read. And it's almost the first time we've seen Japanese games get the blockbuster treatment. Maybe you can say FF13 got it, with like having a Leona Lewis theme song and stuff.
Well, I think Final Fantasy has gotten it since 7. That would be it. I remember Final Fantasy X in particular being just like the next big game for a while until it came out. And then it was just accepted in the same way.
So, VGK dates the blockbuster to pretty recently, is the thing?
No, you mean that specifically, though. I was just thinking about games hyped in game magazines as the next game you have to buy. Definition.
Oh god, yeah. Final Fantasy's success is absolutely built on that. Like, you have Final Fantasy 1, right, had the year of Final Fantasy as this massive marketing exercise, which is the reason that it's the global success story rather than Dragon Quest, which is a very similar game but didn't sell nearly as well. And then FF7 had a massive marketing push because it was a PlayStation 1 flagship title. So the story of Final Fantasy is the story of marketing. I don't mean to counteract that at all. But the thing that I want to come back to in Leroy's question about kind of new IPs and the health or the fertility of the genre, I guess, is the comparison you made was explicitly to both the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation. And like Super Nintendo, undeniably, in some important ways, massively fertile for this genre. Lots of new Japanese-made RPGs on that platform, some of which have become icons of the genre, most notably Chrono Trigger. But I don't know the PlayStation 1 era as well, apart from like the Final Fantasies and those 3 kind of almost Final Fantasy games that we looked at in year 1. So what games are you thinking about there?
I tell you, I got that start on PlayStation. Wild Arms did, although Wild Arms is discontinued.
Star Ocean got its Western start.
Yeah, that's
on
Western
PS1.
start. Persona started on the PlayStation.
Suikoden.
Suikoden, even though that's now gone.
Yeah. It still has a legacy. Oh boy.
Yeah, the less said about that, the better. Okay, so yeah, there are some examples. Because I guess when you're talking about new IPs, I'm not sure that's the right framework to be looking at, or at least I think that's the question as posed then, and we gave a negative answer then. We said, no, it's not possible for a new IP to get that traction. But I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think that's too narrow a question. Partly because we kind of forgot about some games that we hate. Specifically, Bravely Default.
Well,
Dark Souls. Sequel. I wanted the Dark Souls. I think is a slightly different thing, but like Bravely Default and now Octopath Traveler.
There's Yokai Watch also,
particularly in Japan.
In Japan.
So there are games that break through.
Oh God, Ni no Kuni.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Although Ni no Kuni is older than the period I think we're talking about.
No, yeah, it is, but it managed to get a sequel.
Yeah, and I guess I worry a bit because we've also seen I Am Setsuna, and like there's Blue Reflection and Blue Sphere and something else I've forgotten. Do I mean Blue Reflection?
Blue Reflection is the magical girl.
It is. You're right. Yeah, it's a new one.
Yeah. So.
Also, you're thinking of Lost Sphere. You
Lost
keep saying
Sphere.
Blue Sphere.
It doesn't
That's
matter.
Right.
Blue Sphere is pretty good.
I knew one of them didn't start with blue. Blue Sphere is the fucking Star Ocean game, isn't it?
It is.
Oh,
yeah, so it's a Sonic minigame.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a Sonic 3 special stage.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm rubbish.
The last Blue Sphere.
Yeah, so that joke in the intro that I did was about Lost Sphere, not Blue Sphere. But anyway, I guess the point I'm making is that darts are still being thrown at the board, and occasionally they're hitting. And we might find that what we're in at the moment is a phase where we'll look back on it and see more health than is visible now. Or even the picture has changed a bit with Octopath, right? Because every fucker's talking about it, however bad it might be.
I looked at, or I just glanced at it. It's ended up on my feed for some reason. IGN's traffic rates. And number 1 is Fortnite. Number 2 is Octopath Traveler.
Really?
During the month leading up to the release, not even just like after it came out.
Yeah. I guess also it's worth noting that that is the same phenomenon as FF7, right? Where it's a new platform getting big Square Enix weight behind it. I mean, this isn't Bravely Default 3. Bravely 3 Fault. I mean, it would be 3 faults, right?
And they'd be out.
If only. But, like, there are important questions, right? There is this question of whether Tokyo RPG Factory can actually produce a hit. Because Chrono Trigger, not Chrono Trigger. I am Setsuna.
And Lost Sphere.
I am Chrono Trigger.
Basically. There's a question hanging over them and whether they can find anything like the market that the Bravely Octopath team found. There's also, like, Square... I keep talking about this because I keep hoping that something will come of it because I kind of like Hajime Tabata, but, like, Square's got this new big studio that used to be Business Division 2, which is presumably eventually going to announce that it's working on something.
After 15 wraps up in 2020. Not even a joke at this point because DLC is planned for 2019.
But, I mean, there are recruitment ads going around for that team, right? They're setting up for something. So, I guess what I really want to say is, if the question is, are JRPGs more or less dead than they were when we started this project? We started this project to say, well, they were never dead. The picture that we have of the death of the JRPG is, whatever its relationship to actual sales figures or commercial facts about actors in the industry, what we have as the death of the JRPG is a Western construction. It's an image that is imposed by selective focusing on things that exist out there and by the creation of particular ways of talking about JRPGs. And again, that's why I made so much fuss about mentioning Yahtzee, because he provided the escapist forums with a particular way of talking about JRPGs.
Yeah, I want to bring up, I believe I said this, I don't know if it was in an episode, I'm just going to say it again. A good rhetorical point to remember is that if your conversation partner is laughing at a joke and you try to correct them, they're not going to listen while they're still laughing at the joke.
Yeah.
And that's what Yahtzee normalized as JRPGs discussions in the modern internet era.
I mean, he normalized that. He also normalized not having to have a joke before people start laughing, right? Yeah. Because before that style of criticism, you at least had to make your own jokes. But now you can just, reference Yahtzee, and it sounds like a joke because a British guy said it really fast in a snobby accent. And it's bullying, basically, except you can't bully a genre.
I'd say the genius of Yahtzee is that he would read forums and then make the video about the forums. So it's just a circular method of referencing going on. Yeah,
and that's why it was so good for producing memes in the slightly more theorized sense of the word, right? What he was doing was producing a rhetoric that was particularly attractive for people to participate in because it let them feel better than something. And it's the Total Biscuit thing as well, where Total Biscuit says it's inexcusable that this game doesn't have an FOV slider. He doesn't know shit about FOV sliders or coding camera work in games. The man knew nothing about that stuff. But because he could say that in a way that made gamers feel like they knew it, the audience feels like they've been put on the same level as developers.
Yeah.
And then the upshot of that recently has been things like the Jessica Price firing. It gives people a new vector for attack on the people who work in this industry. So we kind of ended up in the Exist Archive episode saying, well, maybe actually, in some ways, the JRPG is more dead than it was.
That's all my fault.
Kind of, but also, we weren't nimble enough to push back on it or to challenge the question, because we were really tired, that recording, I seem to remember. But, what has changed is the way JRPGs are attended to. 3 years ago when we started this, nobody was giving a shit. Or it was a very small group of people giving a shit. And suddenly, because of what happened at the start of last year, with 3 big new games, and some effective marketing, and some bonkers marketing, like the FF15 car...
Does anyone actually own that fucking car, by the way?
I'm sure somebody bought the shitting thing.
Where are they now? That fucking car.
And the Shenmue forklift.
Oh god.
Fuck, Shenmue 3's got to happen at some point.
Oh god.
Around the same time as the FF7 remake. But
yeah, when we started this, Basically, the most that JRPGs could say is that Final Fantasy XV is on the horizon. And Persona 5.
When it comes to criticism, there's been a shift in demographics too. In that before, even 3 years ago, it was like coming off the dead end of everyone still uses IGN, GameSpot, and Kotaku or whatever. Like I would say that's already been. It was already like that wasn't true anymore 3 years ago, but it was true 5 years ago. And now, I mean, it's like same stuff, new skin, but now there's Waypoint, and there's still Kotaku, and there's Video Game 24/7 and whatever, and a lot of these sites actually do talk about Japanese games only because like the actual the base is there. Queer people like these games.
Well, it's so. I think half of it is queer people like these games, and more people are like aware of queer people as an audience. But there's also there's an unpalatable side to that, which is the extent to which like the fascist gamers have bought into Japan as some sort of like very authoritarian space as well.
Yeah,
because their perception of the realities of politics in Japan is very limited. Like there are two sides to that coin, and you can bet that the new Escapist, with its commitment to apoliticality, is going to cover lots and lots of stuff about Japanese games and localization, and are we censoring Japanese culture? Yeah. Like that discourse died away for a bit, but it's definitely coming back because that's the only end point for a project like the resurrected Escapist god.
I think a revision of what I was saying, like, because I said what I said in Exist Archive, but and I'm not going to say this is what I meant to say. It's more like looking back and what I was feeling and why I said it. Really, what I was frustrated on was that there was, even if I would go back and read reviews about Exist Archive, no one would touch on any of the, I wouldn't be able to find anything that touched on the themes of the game. I wouldn't be able to find anyone who would, like, write about anything interesting about the game. I read one review about it comparing it to Valkyrie Profile, and they were disappointed that it wasn't like Valkyrie Profile, but in some ways it is like Valkyrie Profile. And that was the whole review. The whole review was about Valkyrie Profile and not about Exist Archive. And so I mean, on one hand, I was like, why can people look at Persona 5 and be like, well, these are the themes of Persona 5. This is how it's different. And then, but when it's an untested, untrialed game, they revert back to, well, the gameplay is okay, and it reminds me of this game, and you might like it if you like RPGs. And it's just like a completely different style of coverage for a game that doesn't have a brand associated to it. But then, I mean, when I say these things, I realize the people doing work on games that look at them in a more concrete way, or a way that like tries to actually talk about the game instead of marketing speak, as us and people we like, and satellites and athletes. And so, like, the writing is being done. It's just being done by me. Yeah. So I'm like, well, that doesn't count.
There's an element of that. I think also, like, you probably go back and you'd find that's true in the PS1 era. You probably find that's true in the SNES era, right?
Oh, right. The level of I read the review of Tales of Destiny during that time period on GameSpot. It got a 3 out of 10. And it was just said the graphics are awful. They're 2D. They look bad. I can't understand how the gameplay works. The game sucks. 3 out of 10. And I was just like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah. And I think, like, so I guess there again, the point of bringing all this up is to shift us from a kind of modernist, things are moving in a direction view to a kind of steady state view, where it's like, actually, things haven't changed that much. Because honestly, let's just bring in some Marxism, why not? The property relations haven't changed, right? The period of time is vast by video game standards. It's 30 years. It's like half of video games. But in actual material terms, it's fucking no time at all. There's been no transformative social development in that time. Certainly not to the extent that a power dynamic has shifted between, like a genuine power dynamic has shifted between like American economy and Japanese economy. And so roughly the same things are going to occur, but we're just going to be fed different kind of meta accounts of that.
The current style would be Jason Schreier explaining to you how the new game is not like Final Fantasy VI or Suikoden 2.
Yeah. But like, the thing is, this podcast has been really good for helping us focus, helping us navigate the space and get our own sense of the landmarks of it. I think that if we still regard ourselves as having a polemical project, like a changing people's minds project at all, we need to shift our mode now to a different mode of the dissemination of that discourse, because the sites have shifted a bit, because the games have shifted a bit, because we're talking now about the return of the JRPG rather than the death of the JRPG. So whatever continuing activities we have in the commercial games JRPG space need to focus on something that actually we couldn't do a regular podcast on, because it's going to depend on when new games come out and on tracking the contours of discourse more closely. If we want to do that at all, which, like, it's going to be fucking exhausting if we do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm up for it, but I'll probably try to weave it in with my job, which is teaching about video games.
Yeah.
I mean, I think RPGs are really cool, but it's not like... I'm not like... When I started this cast, and definitely because of years before it, I was kind of elitist in the sense I thought JRPGs were better. But
Yeah.
now I'm more excited about the idea of RPGs from any language or culture. Like, Off, for example, is partially interesting because it's French, and you can't, like, just divorce that from Off.
Yeah. And Orion, and...
Yeah. And I'm excited what can be, like, gained through a shared history, where we, instead of, like, pitting the styles against each other, like, we can do criticism that focuses more on common ground and unification. In a certain sense, right? Not like erasing the individuality or the context of where these things came from, but treating RPGs as a shared language that we've collaborated on together, despite, those barriers.
Yeah. What should we actually call Cosmic Star Heroine, given that we can't call it a Japanese game?
I don't know. I mean, it's just an RPG, right?
Yeah. But, I mean, that's the thing. It's just an RPG, right? And that's a useful thing to say in response to all the effort to brand it a JRPG.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the same goes for lots of other Japanese... Like, the Doki Doki Literature Club problem as well, right? Of people making games that imitate Japanese styles without having any grasp of what the games they're imitating are actually like.
Also for the whole point and purpose to mock those Japanese styles.
Yeah, that too. So, yeah, I guess that kind of wraps up what I wanted to say on like, are JRPGs dead? Are JRPGs dead?
Yeah. For my point of view on this, I basically say we've probably played more JRPGs than a lot of people would in like fucking 2 decades. In 3 years. Fuck me. That's wild. We played like 35 games. Well, we've had 35 episodes. We played multiple games in some episodes. We're up to like 40 by the end of this. Some shit like that.
If you then factor in a bunch of games that we
played
played
in the vicinity of, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's probably like 50-ish games that we've covered now. And those are long fucking games.
Yeah, like, we also did, like, Tales of Zestiria and Berseria episodes and Fantasia. We didn't cover those in the main cast, but, like, yeah.
We're talking about 2,000 plus hours of games.
Yeah.
Just ballpark, right?
It's a lot. And I understand why people can't follow in our footsteps exactly, because that would be a fucked up thing to ask. But maybe go back and listen to some episodes and play a game or two sometime if it piques your interest. Get yourself a feel for what milestones and landmarks we touched on as we built this map of the genre.
Start with Dragon Quest, for the love of God.
Yeah, maybe not one, but...
I was going to say something like that.
Yeah,
Though
start
actually,
with the Dragon Quest franchise.
The modern remakes of Dragon Quest 1 are no big deal. But then at that point, you're kind of just like...
Playing Dragon Quest 4 or 5.
It's like eat your vegetables if you're just go straight to remake, I think. But whatever.
Yeah. Right now, this format does not best suit the discourse or our interests. And that's why it's going to come to an end. That's about it.
But we're not going to shut about JRPGs.
Oh god, no. If I had to stop talking about JRPGs, I would be the most miserable person on Twitter. Oof.
Yeah.
You can
not talk
also,
about JRPG. Sorry, go on.
I mean, also anyone listening to this, if you're interested in things we say, you can do this with us. You can be a critic too. It's not. I mean, you don't have to be that. You don't have to be smart or anything.
I mean, look at me.
You don't need to. Well, you don't need to put yourself down beforehand. If you're genuinely interested in it and you think you have something to say, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's been really nice to see that a few people who've been, like, in our community have kind of picked that up and started doing their own critical stuff, which is cool. Keep that up.
Yeah.
I believe in like a really postmodern take on criticism where we're all critics now. Like,
Yep.
the state of professional criticism is dire because no
Yes.
one takes that very... Like, you don't need someone to be that critic arbiter for you if you can just be a critic too.
Yep. Just remember, the internet is a vehicle for your ideas. All it takes to start a podcast is a microphone and a hosting service, which you can get for free on some sites that aren't great for like long form stuff like us, but definitely for like shorter stuff, you could absolutely host short criticism on like a podcasting site.
And I guess another barrier is that like people feel like, well, if I do all this, no one's going to care. But if we're mutuals, if I know you, I'll care. I pay attention to that stuff, even when I don't have enough energy to engage or anything.
Yeah, and like you can also submit, like if you want to do some writing, you can submit to Critical Distance. It might not get featured if it doesn't fit their like theme for the week, but like you can put yourself out there. Just don't be afraid to say, hey, I did a thing and I'm proud of it. Please look at it. Because I know a lot of folks have anxiety about that, but trust me, everyone has anxiety about that at first. Share it with your friends. Share it with people who you know that will at least care a little bit about it, and work your way up from there. And also, we have a Discord, so if you want to come in and share some stuff that you wrote with us, we're cool with that.
Yeah. Also, like, the bar you've got to clear is Jason Schreier, which is not a high bar, right? If you can just be better than Jason Schreier.
Can you determine which decade Trails in the Sky came out in? I'm still mad about that, like 2 years later. Holy shit.
It's closer to 3.
No.
And that's only since the recording, not the actual article.
Yeah. It's like 2.5, huh? God damn. Thanks for listening to Dead Genre Chronicles. This wrap-up episode has been an important one for us, and we hope you enjoy listening to us discuss things. When I sought out critics who were willing to engage with JRPGs, it was originally meant to be a network of writers, a group of people who I had identified as being respectful enough to the genre past its mainstream awareness to be trusted with writing deeper reads and assessments of it, and that didn't exactly pan out. I was a nobody, still kind of am, and it ended up being a passion project because I didn't have the funds to, like, pay people to write stuff for that, and all of that meant it kind of didn't take off. But despite that, I somehow managed to stumble into being friends with a pair of amazing critics that you hear talking every month on Dead Genre Chronicles, and we redirected that critical energy into making a Game Club podcast. And for the past 3 years, we've widened our awareness to the genre, and by kind of spreading our bases, we slowly built a less incomplete record of various lineages of the genre, and we meditated on the meme that led us to our branding. In the original post pitching my idea, I had this to say: just like Starlight, the value of a game will not reach us instantly, and so we must study the space from which it comes. The views we have will change with each new pair of eyes and the time and place from which they are viewed, as they would with constellations in the night sky. Unfortunately, Starlight is transient. Eventually it'll be hidden by a new day, and when you next seek a star's light, you might find a gap in the heavens in its place. But, to misquote an anime, stars shine and fade away, but the memories stay bright. I hope you've enjoyed your time as a listener as much as we've enjoyed working on this project. You can find our work on our website, jrpgsaredead.fyi, or on Twitter at jrpgsaredead, or individually at Invisible for me, at Eat the Pen for Becky, and at Was Not Why Not for Leroy. Join us next time for the finale of Dead Genre Chronicles. Good night, folks.